Time for a bit more rolling around. Come back to your mats, please. Mats, please, now. Yep, flexion time. Just for a change. So just taking a moment to come back and find the floor after all that extending. Yep. I could probably just leave you here for 20 minutes or so, and the floor would inform you about where you need to let go and take that support. But it's probably more fun if we engage in a bit of process. So what's changing over the week as you've curled up and stretched out and arched back? Do you feel more even down either side of your back and your ribs? Or is one side a little more present in your awareness? So please bend your knees, stand your feet, interlace your fingers and bring your hands behind your head. And just notice, what's it like to lift your pelvis into the air, lift your head into the air, with the idea of curling up into a little ball suspended in this hammock. Can you get both ends off the ground? Is it starting to feel more like being curled into a ball? Is it the same part of your spine that touches in the center of your clock? Or is that shifted a little bit? See where 12 is today. If you rock back a little bit, press on 12, come back. And maybe gradually start heading off around the right side of your clock to 1 and 2. Just adding an hour at a time. If you've got a bit of brain space left, just check your feet. Are they as supporting as they could be? Maybe you can sense more clearly now after all that folding and arching where your feet need to be to really give you support. And a few times, just really roll around the right side rim of the clock. How do you sense it today? Do you sense it from the inside? Do you sense the paint on your back? Or do you sense the paint being lifted away from the floor? Okay, then put yourself down. Has that changed your contact with the floor? So that was Sunday's exploration, finding the right side of the clock. And then yesterday we explored the top of the clock, the part either side of 12 o'clock. So when you're ready, bend your knees, bring your hands behind your head, lift your head and your pelvis. Just notice if it's getting any easier to curl yourself up. And starting at 12, a little bit to one side, a little bit to the other. Finding 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Slowly increasing to include 2 and 10. And eventually including 3 and 9. We've talked a lot about flexion and extension this week, but has anything changed in the terms of your ability to side bend as well? And when you're done with that, let it come down and rest. And then we went on to explore what happens if you leave one leg long. So again, bending your knees, bringing your hands behind your head, curling up into the ball. Do you remember which leg it was that allowed you to still find the whole right side of your clock and keep your pelvis in the air? Do you remember in terms of labels or in terms of sensation? Your long legs on the floor, just gently rolling. How does that change your capacity to find each of those numbers? Are there some parts that are easier to find with your leg long? Or are there some parts that take a little more concentration? Let it go. This is a lesson that requires holding that contracted shape in the front of you for lengthy periods of time. What's changing over these days? Are you able to sustain it for longer? Are you able to lift your pelvis higher or your head higher? You sense that something's changed in your back that allows you to do that? Or is it something in your front that's different after all the extension lessons? By this stage of the lesson, Moshe is suggesting that it's not just a case now of lifting your pelvis and lifting your head, but can you also add the intention of bringing your lower ribs closer to your pelvis in the front, really sinking your chest to shorten the front even more. So with that idea, can you interlace your fingers, bend your knees, lift your head and pelvis, but really have the sense of the ribs and the chest closing in the front. And in that position, can you keep your pelvis off the floor, but find 6? So where would you roll to that doesn't put your pelvis on the ground, but still has the sense that you've moved from the center of your clock to 6 o'clock? Is it the same distance from the center as 12 o'clock? And then can you begin to explore this bottom rim of the clock? Explore a little between 6 and 7. How do you organize yourself to roll that way? Which bits lift, which bits lower, which bits support you more clearly, which bits are lifting away from the ground. And so in this part of the clock, is it easier for you to sense your back pressing on the ground or the paint being lifted away from the ground? And you could expand from 6 to 7 to 5. Sorry, not to 5. Is that what I want? Yes, it is. That's right. So you're expanding that arc at the bottom of the clock. How round is it? If we lifted you off, would we see a nice little curve on that bit of the floor? Or would it be a straight line or a wobbly line? And put yourself down. Let that work completely drain away. Has that had any impact on which parts of you are now resting on the floor? It's interesting looking around the room and seeing which little bits of echo of the day I can see in people's toes and heels and oscillating through them. Maybe there's something that you've learned about how to bring rest quietness into your system. So again, bend your knees, interlace your fingers, lift your head and your pelvis, close up the ball, feel your back getting long and round. And again, roll down to 6, cross to 7, back to 5, add into 4, and across to 8. You keep the smoothness of the circle. You spare a little bit of brain space to check that your breath can still flow. And can you shift your attention between the idea of pressing down that portion of your clock, the paint arriving on your back and making a curved line there, and the paint lifting off the floor and leaving a blank space underneath you. And rest again. Okay, and one more time. Bring up your knees, lift your head and your pelvis. Roll towards 6 and complete the bottom half of the circumference of your clock. So gently increasing from 6 to 7 to 5 to 8, 4 to 9 and 3. You're spreading your attention between the holding of yourself short in the front, the lengthening of yourself in the back, pressing on each hour of the clock so precisely that you could defend its position if you stood up and we looked at the floor. You're aware of the flow of your breath, and that the bits of you that are not involved in this movement can actually be soft and at rest. And let it go. And so here you are, after a day of extending, a little bit of flexing, but only 3/4 of a circle, sort of. So how's your back changed? How's your front changed? Does it feel like now that you've left any excess work that you gathered up during the day, that it can stay on the floor? Cleaners can come and hoover that away? that you can go home with yourself in a fairly neutral place that's ready to do whatever you need to do this evening. So that you can rest well, come back fresh for new information on Thursday. As you lie there with the sense of length in your front and your back, could you imagine what it would be like for your mat to gently come up to vertical and stand you on your feet? What would that be like? And would that be different from your usual sensation? How would you walk? And then as much as you're able to keep those sensations present with you, can you come up to standing and see how much of it does come with you? How well your imagination can match the experience that you find. And take it for a little walk. See what it's like to have length on the front and the back. Then maybe we could just make a couple of piles of the mats so that they can come through and hoover up anything that we've discarded. Have a great rest day. Come back refreshed on Thursday morning.